Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro Moros led the official act to celebrate the 68th birthday of the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez. The government of Nicaragua withdrew the approval granted to Mr. Hugo Rodriguez, the candidate for the post of the U.S. ambassador to Nicaragua. The Senegalese elect their deputies on Sunday in legislative elections that will be a test before the 2024 presidential election. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, led the official act to celebrate the 68th anniversary of the birth of the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez. From the Aquiles Nassau Cultural House, outstanding arches of the national folklore paid a tribute to the men who mark a before and after in the contemporary political history of Venezuela. At the end of this artist tribute, the chief of the state emphasized that the people have faith in the spiritual strength of Chavez. At the end of the act, the president assured that the meeting between the Venezuelan Minister of Foreign Affairs, Carlos Faria, and the foreign minister appointed by the government of Gustavo Petro, Álvaro Leiva, in the state of Táchira was a success. The dialogue between the foreign ministers of Colombia and Venezuela addressed 14 topics of binational interest and plans for the future of both nations.
It was a virtuous meeting of union with the spirit of Bolivar. It was a meeting that tells us that the future will be better and Colombia and Venezuela will meet again in peace, with love, in freedom, looking to the future. It has been a successful, virtuous, extraordinary meeting. I thank President Gustavo Petro. I thank him for sending his foreign minister, Álvaro Leiva, to San Cristobal.
In the same context, President Nicolás Maduro Moros spoke about some of the issues that were addressed during the meeting between the two foreign ministers.
They talked about 14 topics, all the opportunities that are opening up for the entire border region and the entire western region of the country. They talked about the peace and security plans for the entire border. They talked about the progressive economic and commercial opening of the border. They talked about the plans for the future of union. Colombia and Venezuela are twin brothers, and we have to march together, united, as one.
Earlier in Venezuela, the foreign minister appointed by the president-elect of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, visited the border state of Táchira to meet with authorities of the Venezuelan government. Governor Freddy Bernal received the next Colombian Foreign Minister, Álvaro Leiva, at the Palacio de los Leones headquarters of the regional government, in what represents one of the first rapprochements between both countries, after years of diplomatic disengagement imposed by the current Colombian executive. The meeting was attended by the Venezuelan Foreign Minister, Carlos Faria, who traveled to the locality to hold a meeting with the visiting dignitary. At the same time, the Vice President-elect of Colombia, Francia Márquez, is also developing a South American tour to outline the future relations of this nation with the closest neighbors.
Let this be the first step on a long road to the meeting of fraternity, friendship, love, and prosperity for both the peoples of Colombia and Venezuela. I have no doubt that these bonds of friendship and familiarity between Colombia and Venezuela will become much stronger after this encounter. It only remains for me to ask Almighty God, to our holy Christ of La Grita, to bless, as He had done it, this meeting of fraternity, and that we can move on to the unity and love of the peoples of Colombia and Venezuela.
The next Colombian Foreign Minister, Álvaro Leiva, said that both countries will re-establish binational and diplomatic relations as of August 7th.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Carlos Faria, together with the designated Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Colombia, Álvaro Leiva Durán, meeting in the city of San Cristobal, Táchira State, Venezuela, inspired by the historic deed of the liberator Simón Bolívar, reaffirmed the historic ties of brotherhood, complementarity, and cooperation that unite our people. Complementarity and cooperation that unite our peoples. On this occasion, the foreign ministers first expressed the willingness to advance in a work agenda to move forward in the gradual normalization of binational relations after August the 7th with the appointment of ambassadors and other diplomatic and consular officials.
Likewise, the Foreign Minister of Venezuela, Carlos Faria, emphasized that Venezuela and Colombia will work for peace and mutual security.
We have agreed to appoint, once that moment arrives, of course, the ambassadors who will represent our countries, all the teams that should be working in the consulates, both those representing the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the Republic of Colombia. We have talked, agreed, and we have concurred with the fact that we must look carefully and work for peace, for the security of our border. We're talking about the gradual opening of the border, something that will directly and immediately benefit our people.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. The government of Nicaragua withdrew the approval granted to Mr. Hugo Rodriguez, the candidate for the post of the U.S. ambassador to Nicaragua. Foreign Minister Denis Moncada indicated that the U.S. representative made interfering statements against Nicaragua during a conference. The official pointed out that diplomacy and in compliance with the postulates of the Vienna Convention, the ambassador or postulant to the post cannot interfere in the internal affairs of the country. Likewise, Moncada rejected all the interfering actions of any country.
The government of Nicaragua, in use of its faculties and in exercise of its national sovereignty, immediately withdraws the approval granted to the postulant Hugo Rodriguez. We reiterate that every diplomat has the duty to contribute to the respect and understanding between peoples and governments. That is to say, in the human community. We recall that as a function of democracy and in compliance with the postulates of the Vienna Convention, the ambassador or postulant to ambassador Hugo Rodriguez cannot get involved in national issues that are inherent to Nicaraguans, and much less disrespect, offend, humiliate, threaten, play a leading role, or be a factor of interference or interventionism in the internal affairs of our country.
In Panama, workers continue to take to the streets in protest against the high cost of living and in demand of labor reivindications as well as public policies that benefit the most vulnerable sectors. The mobilized social organizations continue to demand the reduction of fuel and the basic food basket prices, social justice, and the effective fight against corruption. The events take place in parallel to the activities of the Single Table of Dialogue, in which the government and the trade union movements continue to seek consensus for the stability of the country and the welfare of the people.
The struggle continues against the high cost of living and the fuel price increase. A progress of the negotiating table between the social movements and the government is already being achieved. But the struggle continues, and here we see the educators in this important struggle.
And to mark the 107th anniversary of the U.S. occupation of Haiti, social organizations demonstrated their request the United Nations in Haiti to leave the country. The protests were held in front of the headquarters of the United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti, located in the municipality of Pétionville, to denounce the implications of the neglect by the international community and the national government of the situation in the Caribbean nation. Citizens demand the BNU to take up their demands after 107 years of the occupation of the U.S., asserting that the mission does not seek the welfare of the Haitians. In Cuba, after the approval of the Family Code, the National Electoral Council announced the beginning of preparations for the popular referendum on the document. The National Assembly of the People's Power established as date for the referendum on Sunday, September 25, 2022, for which the electoral body presented the pre-electoral work schedule. Do you agree with the Family Code? Is the question to be answered by the voters attended to the 21,000 polling stations set up for this process. In this regard, the President of the National Electoral Commission of Cuba, Alina Balseiro, explained that the electoral roll registered over 39,000 new young voters, for which reason they are working with the Ministries of Education for their preparation. The President of Peru, Pedro Castillo, through this annual message to the Parliament, will extend cooperation to all political sectors to work together to solve the country's problems. The head of the state made references to a series of measures with which he seeks to overcome the climate of confrontation that reigned in his first year of government. Pedro Castillo emphasized that he will extend his hand to work together for the benefit of the people, based on the national development objectives. In the same way, the president made a clear separation with corruption and ratified his commitment to submit himself to the investigations opened against him in the public ministry. The Workers' Federation of the Meat and Related Industries in Uruguay declared a conflict in order to reject a series of layoffs and arbitrary sanctions by the national government. The union that brings together all the meat packing plant workers of the country denounced the repression, discrimination, and the systematic persecution of the unionized workers, besides the violation of the collective bargaining agreement and irregular payments. They also denounced the wage reduction and the constant violation of the internal agreement by the private companies. The mobilized sectors stated that if no solutions are found, they will extend the strike during the next week. In Argentina, the resignation of the Secretary of Strategic Affairs of the executive branch, Gustavo Vélez, was announced. In the middle of expectations for eventual changes in the cabinet, the official, who has accompanied President Alberto Fernández since the beginning of his term, personally informed his decision during the meeting at the Casa Rosada. A lawyer and journalist, Vélez was also Secretary of the Civil Service and Director of the Economic and Social Council and the Minister of the Interior. In Argentina, President Alberto Fernández decided to reorganize the economic areas of his cabinet for better management. Through a statement, the head of state declared that the Ministries of Economy, Productive Development, and Agriculture, Livestock, and Fisheries will be unified and will also include relations with international bilateral and multilateral credit organizations. The new ministry will be in charge of Sergio Massa, the current president of the Chamber of Deputies, as soon as his resignation from his seat is resolved. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Senegalese elect their deputies on Sunday in legislative elections that will be a test before the 2024 presidential election. The single-round legislative elections is designed to renew the 165 seats in the unicameral parliament, which has been largely controlled by the presidential camp for the last 5 years. MPs are elected by a system that combines proportional representation with a national list for 53 MPs and majority voting in the departments for 97 others. The diaspora has 15 deputies. On Sunday, polling stations are scheduled to open at 8 a.m. local time and close at 6 p.m. 7 million people are registered to vote. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, announced on Thursday that the continent still does not have a single dose of the monkeypox vaccine, even though it's the only region to have documented deaths from the disease. The Africa CDC director said that to date, more than 2,100 monkeypox cases have been recorded in 11 African countries and 75 people have died. The acting head of the African's Public Health Agency, Ahmed Owell, said in a weekly media briefing that 1.3 billion people, African continent is again being left behind in access to doses in an uncomfortable echo of the COVID-19 pandemic. Although monkeypox has been established in parts of Central and West Africa for decades, it was not known to spark large outbreaks beyond the continent or to spread widely among people until May, when authorities detected dozens of epidemics in Europe, North America, and elsewhere. U.S. President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping spoke by telephone on Thursday and discussed escalating tensions over Taiwan, trade disputes, and their attempt to keep great power rivalry in check. The two presidents discussed issues important to bilateral relations and other regional and global issues, and charged their teams to continue to address these issues, particularly climate change and the health security, according to the White House. The final hot-button item was House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's possible visit to Taiwan, which China sees a major provocation and has threatened to take strong measures if the visit goes ahead. The United States economy entered a technical recession with a 0.9% decline in gross domestic product. According to preliminary estimates registered by the U.S. Commerce Department, the economy contracted by 0.9% in the second quarter after 1.6% drop reported in the first 3 months of the year 2022. In this regard, the White House declared not to be surprised and that the economy is on the right track, while the Federal Reserve System keeps applying plans to lower the effects caused by the inflationary process. By consensus, specialists qualify the recession as a technical recession after 2 quarters of economic contraction. And the Pope Francis affirmed during his visit to Canada that colonization doesn't stop. The Supreme Pontiff celebrated Mass at Shrine at Eastern Quebec, where he met with the church spiritual leaders at the Cathedral Basilica of Notre Dame of Quebec. The religious leader reiterated his request for forgiveness, expressing his shame and pain for the role played by the Catholic institutions in the deplorable system of residential schools that attempted to strip the Indigenous people of Canada of their language, culture, and the worldview. Francis warned that the pain and contempt in history is the cause of colonization that persists in the world. Now we move on to other topics. Russian Prosecutor General Igor Krasnov denounced on Thursday in Kyrgyzstan that Western weapons supplied to Ukraine are appearing on the black market. He stated this during his visit to the city of Sholpunara, where he held a working session with his counterpart Kurmanul Sulezhev. Prosecutor Krasnov explained that there is a strong circulation of arms and ammunition, mainly on the black market, which is not controlled by any community authority. The senior Russian official recalled that Moscow raised all the complaints about the risks of lack of law control over the military equipment, but they were ignored. The Russian prosecutor also reported at the same event that his office has initiated thousands of criminal cases for what he called the extermination of the Kiev regime on the population of the Donbas. And TeleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen are in place since July 1st. Quite soon, further changes will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.